Hello, I'm Elaine Bauer Keeley, the daughter of Dr. Ralph and Charlene Bauer. My father was a city councilman from 1992 to 2002 and mayor in 1997. His wife, my mother, has always been dedicated to community service, so much so that for my 18th birthday I was presented a lifetime membership to Friends of the Library. In 1992, the year they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, while my father was a sitting city council member, she was interviewed by HBTV. Watching this interview today, I'm reminded that every person who serves on the city council brings with them the service of their family as well. I hope you will learn from and enjoy this incredible episode of FlasHBack.
Everything we talk about in Huntington Beach doesn't have to be controversial and sensational. Sometimes we can talk about some subtle issues and develop a sensitivity. Coming up on Perspective, stay tuned. I'll show you what we mean. Hello and welcome once again to Perspective. I'm your host, Ron Davis, and thanks for joining us. Today my special guest is Charlene Bauer, wife of Councilman Ralph Bauer. Welcome, Charlene.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you're a reluctant guest.
I am a reluctant guest.
Well, I'll tell you and I'll tell the audience what I want to develop, the theme I want to develop here, and I want to see what it's like to be a council member from somebody else's perspective, somebody who pays the price. You're the wife, a longtime wife of Ralph Bauer, who's been a councilman for what? Has it been 10 years?
10 years, and we will have been married 50 this month.
June 25th.
Right, you got it.
Isn't that I'm trying to do my homework on this thing. But he's been there for 10 years, and before that he was involved in the school board. He was on the school board.
For 10 years.
For 10 years.
8 on Ocean View School Board and 8 on the Huntington Beach School Board, high school board, and they overlapped.
Okay. Now, I told you before we came on the show that this is a community property state, so that entitles you to half of Ralph's earnings.
Right.
Right, and so you got to earn that money, and a lot of people don't know how the big bucks the council member makes. $175 a month, isn't it?
Right. I don't even know. But we have a joke in the family that he had $700 when we got married and I had $300. And if we were ever to divorce, I would give him his $700 back. So that would be a very poor business deal, so I'm safe.
Well, but you the taxpayers ought to understand, I'm a community property state, you're getting $87.50. They ought to understand the value. Right. And just, I got criticized because I'm critical of what we do pay our council members, and I wrote a column about that. And
I saw that.
And somebody pointed out to me, well, they get this expense money, and Ron, you didn't mention that, and indeed they do. They get about $600 a month expense money, which they consume in expenses. So it's not really salary, it's expense money. Right. The salary's $175. The mayor gets a little bit more money. But let me get back to...
Shall I tell you how that money is spent?
Your $87.50?
And Ralph's $87.50.
Not right now. You can tell me about...
Oh, yeah, I want to tell you.
Do you? Go ahead, and then you can tell me about it.
Because by the time you go to all the functions that you should go to, and we always pay for them, you're in the hole.
Most people don't know that, and that's an excellent point. Most people think that in the city, when there's a function, a charitable function, that you get to go in those things free. You can't. Legally speaking, you have to, I think there's some limit, yeah. but you have to pay your own way. I know.
Yeah.
I know that I've invited Ralph for lunch years ago when I was lobbying at something, and I didn't really know Ralph that well, and I had lunch with him. That's what everybody does. We call up our council member, and we think this is a time that they're free. Let's go have lunch. And we expect, when we're doing it, we expect to pick up the tab. We don't. The council member takes that money out of his own pocket. Money, He didn't necessarily, maybe he wanted the brown bag at that day, but we insisted they come down, and we increased those expenses. So, they get this $175 and you get $87.50, and I want the taxpayers to understand what they're getting. When he ran for council a couple of times before he was appointed.
Yes, he did.
When he was appointed, he undoubtedly lobbied. He wanted the position, and I'm sure you probably did. You want him to have the position?
Yes, because he really loves Huntington Beach, and when we came to Huntington Beach in 1964, we decided we'd like to live in a city that our children would like to stay in. And many little tiny towns, the children can't wait to get out.
Right.
And if they're too big, they can live, way across town, or they hate the traffic or whatever,
right.
And they don't want to ever stay. And we're lucky, both of our children do live in town.
Elaine and Eric, you've got 2 children.
Elaine and Eric, and one lives in the area right here around City Hall, and the other one lives in southeast Huntington Beach. So at most we're 11 miles apart, which gives me a lot of pleasure because I see my grandchildren at least once a week.
10 years ago, when he was appointed, you get that final vote, I suspect that there was a certain celebration and a jubilation.
Oh, yes.
Feel the same way now? I mean, do you...
Well, yeah, I feel it's been a very productive time. I think the City Council has done a lot of good things in 10 years. A lot of things are just procedural that nobody really knows or sees or
right.
isn't controversial. But I think that they've made a lot of progress about having people participate. This is a town of wonderful volunteers.
So you're happy because you think they've accomplished a lot. But what happens to Charlene Bauer? Now, here you are for 10 years. Ralph and you have your phone number listed.
Yes.
Anybody can look it up.
Right.
You get phone calls during the day and night. You answer those phone calls.
Oh, sure.
And do you get... Are some of those phone calls a little angry, upset with some of Ralph's decisions, or?
Once in a while they are, and sometimes they're from close friends, and you wonder, gee, just, kind of wait until he gets home, and don't tell me all about it.
But they take it out on you, don't they?
A little bit, but generally people are very courteous, and I usually give them the City Hall phone number because Ralph is down here all the
right.
time, so they may as well call him there. And but mostly it's a very positive experience. Now, some issues people agree with Ralph, and other issues they don't. And usually I get to know who's on which side and who's on the other side. But it's really a good place to live.
Well, I understand that. You're getting away from my question. I mean, the 8750 we're giving you, so you get to be the telephone service for Ralph at home,
right?
And you field those phone calls, and sometimes, not always, you get to take the abusive phone call once in a while, or people who want to, take their anger out on Ralph by taking it out on you to some extent, or by pitching you?
It's happened a few times. I'll tell you the best thing to do if you're a spouse of a councilman, because they are really busy. One is you've got to know how to drive because you're always in 2 cars.
Why is that? Why are you always in 2 cars?
Well, because he has to go early, or he's coming from somewhere else, and so we'll meet there.
Go early. This is a part-time job.
Oh, well, Ralph has made it a full-time job.
But that's
that's
word.
his choice.
But that's the word. Is that it's a part-time job? It's we got a budget of $340 million. I forget how many committees we have. I know because I go to a lot of these meetings. I mean, Ralph puts in 60 hours a week.
Easily.
And I'm not going to take away from any other council member. I know that they all put in essentially, if you averaged it out, 40 hours a week.
Oh, I think so.
I mean,
Every one of them.
Everybody treats this as a full-time job, and yet we go around saying, it's just a part-time job. But I'm going to get you back on track here. Here's a guy, 60 hours a week. He's going to meetings, and you talked about got to take 2 cars. Tell us about that.
2 cars. Well, he goes to Los Angeles twice a month to regional meetings. And so if then there's something in Huntington Beach, then generally he'll just take to wherever the freeway is closest, and I'll meet him, and we go in one car if we're going together. If he has to be somewhere early, or he goes to a meeting beforehand and then we're going out or something, then, I bring a car and meet him, whatever.
So if it's a social function, you're going to go out to dinner or something like that, it's almost like you're the afterthought, meet me over here, right?
Well, you could get yourself in feeling sorry if
I'm
you
not trying to
wanted
get, but I mean, he's off. The picture you're drawing is he's up in Los Angeles. You've got to go to a function, and he's kind of fitting you in. Meet me over here,
Right.
And now you've got 2 cars, and now you got to drive one of them back. You drive back together, and then you got to pick one up the next. How often? Just so people don't.
Probably once or twice a week.
Once or twice a week.
We meet in our 2 cars, and our children laugh about it. And at one point, we were seeing so little of him that a family joke is that our son went to the TV and Ralph was on, I guess it was a council meeting, hugged it and said, "Dad, we love you."
Yeah, well, I've heard, and I talked to your daughter Elaine, and she said every once in a while they have a Ralph sighting.
Right.
Speaking of that, and I just to make you feel comfortable, I just thought I would ask you questions from this perspective, because Ralph is famous for putting up his glasses.
Right.
And your daughter told me that when he does that, when his glasses are on his forehead, that indicates that you're safe.
Yeah, right.
But when he puts the glasses down after they were on your forehead, what does that mean?
That means you better have your facts in order.
Going to get some cross-examination?
Right.
So when we're watching him on the TV set, watching him at council meetings, when those glasses come down, the eyes are getting focused and he's starting to burrow in.
Right. That's exactly right. And the kids knew, although he didn't wear glasses before, they knew. And we don't believe in any corporal punishment at raising children, so the children always had to listen to long lectures, and often they said, they'd rather have a good spanking and be out of there. But Ralph can go back to the Lemoores and work forward, which takes a long time on how you make decisions. So,
yeah, he's. I certainly know Ralph a lot better now than I did several years ago, and really an intelligent guy. Develops his facts, forms an opinion. Once he forms an opinion, he's pretty rigid. Is that true?
No, well, generally, I guess. And he has thought it out usually, so there's not a whole lot of point in arguing with him.
But
and if he goes back into history, it's dead, so you might as well just quit.
When you talk about going to these functions, and I take it functions are local functions in the city of Huntington Beach. We've got a lot of them. Everybody says, and I heard somebody say to Mayor Cook the other time, well, this is a dedication. It's just Saturday. It's just between the hours of 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. But that chews up your whole day, doesn't it?
Very often.
And don't you go to most of them?
Yes, because I like to be with Ralph, and I like to be with the volunteers and so forth that are usually putting them on. So, it's part of a social life. It does become your social life, going to functions and being there. And I think people appreciate the elected officials coming to their events that they've worked hard on.
Sure, I understand that, but do you feel because of Ralph's position a certain responsibility to go to these functions? Some functions that you wouldn't, I'd rather stay home and watch a basketball game, maybe.
Right.
I don't know whether you watch basketball.
Oh, always.
Well, good. But, I mean, aren't there times when you
Oh,
do
sure.
it just because?
Or times when you have conflicts where you would rather be maybe with high school and college friends rather than at a function here
Right.
in town. So you usually have to make a choice. And Ralph is famous for saying he can be at 3 or 4 functions at one time.
Does he ask you then to fill in?
No.
Okay,
No.
so
but he tries to juggle the times so that, you know, we're half hour here, a half hour there.
you're racing around.
Right.
Okay. What we know Ralph was on the school board. His whole life has been pretty much involved in public life. And
Right.
and I don't want to ignore some of your accomplishments. I do want to understand the kind of toll we take on the family when somebody's an elected official, what impact that has. But I don't want to ignore what you've done in your own right. You're exceedingly involved, and I suspect would have been involved whether Ralph was or not. The AA, is it the AAUW?
Yes, that's the American Association of University Women.
You formed it?
I helped form it. I put an ad in the Penny Saver in 1966, and 50 women immediately responded. And then we tried to get a charter, and Newport thought we were too small at that time to have our own. But then when we got the 50 women, we were set, and it's been going all these years, and a wonderful organization.
You're involved with the League of Women Voters?
I'm involved with the League of Women Voters, and that it's kind of a funny story in that when I went to the first organizing meeting at Marguerite Davenport's, I knew we'd be friends because she had paintings from the Bay Area of the same artist that we did. And I asked to be on the budget committee, and right away they thought maybe I was a spy from the Birch Society. But
you can say that. I don't think anybody knows what that means anymore, just us older folks.
Yeah, that's right. And that was one of the surprises from the Bay Area, where the Birch Society was kind of an underground society. And here in Orange County, it was advertised in the paper.
Sure. We talked a little bit before the show. It's not only you that gets involved in this stuff, not only you that has to go to these functions, and you're putting out campaign signs, and when the campaign's going well, you're listening to Celebration. When it's not going so well, you're taking a little bit of the anxiety. What about your kids? I mean, you got 2 kids, Elaine and Eric. They live, obviously they can't be too badly impacted. They both live in Huntington Beach.
Right.
But how do they get involved in this stuff? How does...
Oh, well, their father's cause is their cause. And so if there are leaflets to put out, they get their district and, quarter section. And Ralph and I do our area. And so that's 3 less that we have to recruit. And Elaine and Eric have been doing it since they were 4 and 6. So they're getting worn out, they say, but then they always come through.
What about, how has it impacted them in terms of any difference in treatment? I mean, have they been the brunt of any jokes, discriminated against one way or the other? I know it was on the school board or...
Well, I never really felt if we knew what the grades really were.
Oh.
But they're smart, and so that was all right. And then in the city, people will tell them what they'd like to have done, an alley paved or better this or that.
So people lobby your kids
absolutely
to go to lobby you or Ralph to get something done.
Right.
That's great. So we need to divide your $87.50 and give it to Elaine and Eric.
Right.
So they actually get people in the community that know the connection,
right,
and want something done in the city and go disturb or talk to them.
Sure.
What about, has anybody ever been discriminated against in school? You talked about grades, but anybody been sent home because of...
Oh, well, a long time ago, during a teacher's strike, they sent our son home, supposedly for his safety. And he stayed out a day. It was a very tenuous time because the teachers were striking and they wanted more money, and Ralph was on the school board. So, and you know, cities and schools never have had enough money, so it's always a hard-fought negotiation of what it turns out to be.
Who makes the decisions at the council meetings?
7 people.
Well, I mean, who casts Ralph's vote? Is that it?
Oh, once in a while we've had pillow talk, and sometimes we don't even agree.
Well,
we are not clones of each other.
In other words, you do a little battle. He brings it home, doesn't he?
Oh, sure.
And brings home the discussion. But when he votes, that's his decision.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And when the vote goes in a direction that some of your friends don't like, who gets to pay that price?
Oh, probably all of us.
Right.
The family.
One of the there are 2 major issues, more than 2, but major issues of Bolsa Chica Mesa.
Yes, well, we've always worked on saving that
I know,
together.
I know you have, but there was some discussion some time ago about annexation, and Ralph was looking, my recollection was that Ralph was looking hard at that plan. But the Walmart issue, extremely divisive and controversial issue. I would imagine that a lot of your friends were on the opposite side of the ledger on that issue.
Well, they were. A lot of them didn't like to see that dilapidated school area go. But the school district was able to lease that land to Walmart, and of course it brings tax revenue into the city. So
I understand why he supported it.
we thought it was win-win.
Right.
And we always care about schools. Schools are kind of our passion. I taught for 19 years in Garden Grove and 4 years before that in Glendale, before children.
You mean before there was such thing as children, before you had children?
Before I had children.
But you know, well, I don't want to discuss the merits of the Walmart because there are arguments on both sides. But you had friends in that community who took an opposite position.
That's right.
And Ralph voted on the issue, and he was pretty passionate about the issue because of what you've said. You lose relationships as a result of that?
A few, but really all disagreements like that should stop at the City Hall steps.
They should, but did they?
I think 99% did. Most people, you know, can agree to disagree, even though they're very emotionally involved in the issue.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression, and I don't want to lead you into something, but that some of those relationships have come back. Now, Walmart is an issue that was decided, a couple of years ago.
Right.
And there was a campaign for a year before that. So it's a 3 or 4 year old issue. Are you just now restoring some of those relationships?
Yes, some of them are just being restored on new issues where we're coming together again.
Sure, but now for that 4 year period of time, didn't you personally pay a price socially for Ralph's vote?
Oh yes, but I've become a computer school junkie, and so I spend a lot of my time at the Huntington Beach High School adult school taking computers, which is a big time sink and something I've wanted to do. And the teachers there are wonderful, and I have a great time, and the other students are great. So in a way, it's another social scene.
Well, you've diverted. But again, if somebody is running for council or going to be on council, they probably need to understand that their decisions are going to be taken out not only on them, but their family. They're going to lose some friends, even though you didn't get to make the decision. Maybe you agreed with the decision. Somebody else made the decision that impacted you, loss of friends. What about Elaine and Eric? Did they suffer from the same things?
I think, well, they had to walk their blocks, but I think mostly Elaine tried not to discuss it at all. And Eric works for another city, so he didn't have to, maybe. Okay. But, you know, I'm sure people question them and ask them why your father is doing that or whatever, or on other issues too. And usually we've had enough discussion at dinners that they know why he is
Sure.
taking that position. And we're a very verbal family, so everything hangs out. Everybody holds up their hand when they want to speak, even in the family.
You don't make them hold up their hand, do you?
Practically.
Oh my God. What you mentioned also that before he got on the city council, he traveled quite a bit.
Right.
And
that was nice.
And tell us how much traveling you did before, 10 years ago, compared to what you do now. I mean, people need to understand that $175, because I see people go down to the podium, and it's like, we own you. That's what we pay you for. That's, you've got a responsibility to be Johnny on the spot for me. What is it? How's it impacted you in terms of your vacations? You went to Europe?
We used to go to Europe almost every year. And, of course, you don't want to go just for a week.
Right.
So, and there isn't a 2-week period. And so we do still go to Hawaii, and you look for that time where there's a 10-day period so that you can spread out the money a little bit better. But we haven't gone to Europe, except maybe once since Ralph's been on the council. And, of course, we'd like to go. Ralph's parents were travel agents, so we have the bug. And we do own a mountain house up at Arrowhead, which we have not been to, but maybe once or twice a year, because there's always something going on in town. And it's not that you don't want to be there, but then you see this idle assets sitting up there, and you think, somebody's got to use this.
There's, it seems like when you look at the schedule, your schedule, Ralph's schedule, there's always something next week to do. There's always a committee meeting, there's always a function, there's always something else, and that puts Europe on the back burner. That puts the traveling plans on the back burner. Traveling plans that you would have liked to have participated in, but you really can't do it because of his dedication to the city.
That's
and and people are going to think that that this is just a bunch of pap, and I'm kissing up to the city council. But here's a guy who's on one level who's anxious to get off. He's it's been 10 years. But here's a guy that is so passionate about the community. I mean, I was with him at a meeting Thursday. You were there as well. Yeah. So passionate about the district issue, so concerned about where we're going to go, and involved. Last week, the city council voted on some tennis courts, some allocations in tennis courts, just $12,000. I know he was very involved in that. Yeah. So he hasn't slowed down at all. He's not coasting. He's working pretty hard at it.
No, he works very hard at it, and he is somebody with super intelligence and super energy. So far it hasn't been any big strain on health or happiness.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do in December?
Okay.
When it's all over, when it's all of a sudden that's vacuum, what are you going to do?
Well, one, we are going to travel some, and we haven't zeroed in on the first trip, but Ralph wants to go to Spain, Morocco, and Portugal, and I want to go to Iceland, and because that's where my mother's family came from, and it's become quite a resort, or not resort, but an interesting area to go to. And then we like to take a trip once a year with our 11 of us, 5 grandchildren and the 2 children of ours and their spouses. And the best time to go with all the school schedules and everybody's schedule has turned out to be between Christmas and New Year's. So we've been going to Hawaii one year and skiing one year, and this year should be a ski year.
But so this, when he's off the council, you're going to go on vacation.
Right, and we're going to use our Arrowhead place. And Ralph claims he's going to write a book. And he's had 3 books that he said he was going to write during his lifetime, but he hasn't gotten written yet, so we'll see if he really does that.
Well,
And he says he'll go to computer school with me.
Speaking of writing books, I got to wrap this up because we're out of time. I want to thank you, Charlene, for coming here. I hope that the community's been informed. If you have any questions or comments, or you like this style of program, or you don't like it, or you're informed, give us a call, 536-5923. We want your input. Again, I want to thank my special guest, Charlene Bauer. Thanks a lot for your service and Ralph's service to the community. And this is Ron Davis. Thanks for joining us. Tune in next week for a fresh perspective.